Hello, this is the compost bin after approximately 2 weeks. As you can see, insects have gone into it, and the soil looks much darker and richer than it had looked beforehand. Now the specific foods that we placed in here were kiwi, and orange slices, of which a small amount of fungi has started to grow upon. And the soil in general looks darker and more refined now that the worms have been getting to it. Now, these worms are probably below the surface, and as you can see, small micro animals have begun to grow near it. Now the worms do require water, so here is a small amount of water that's being poured into the soil to moisturize the soil, as it will help the soil quality and the worms just survive. Worms prefer moist soil. Also, turning the soil such as this also helps distribute nutrients throughout it, and also finding the worms in general. Now we haven't found any worms yet, mostly because of how deep they live underneath the surface. But we have found small insects, such as some of the springtails that you could see as small gray dots moving throughout the soil. And the soil has greatly improved. It used to, even before I started pouring the water in, it wasn't so moist as it is now. The worms have done a great job of tunneling through to make tunnels that the water could pass through. And also they prefer not to consume citrus, which is why these orange peels don't look as touched as the kiwi peels, but they'll eat any of them regardless. Also, I added a layer of gravel underneath to which water could settle to avoid rapid mold growth within the soil. And as you can see around the edges where the worms probably didn't go as far in due to the sunlight exposure around the edges, it's drier with less tunnels, micro tunnels that is. And also the soil seems to have become much fluffier in texture, in the simplest way to describe it, having become much more porous with smaller particles that are no doubt infused with more. For example, there was less fibers within the soil when we started, signaling that almost certainly the worms began to distribute leaf fiber and cellulose throughout the soil after digestion. and having digestive systems such as theirs greatly increases the microbial content of the soil, making it much more adversarial towards malignant fungi that could grow within the nodes, form nodes within the roots of the soil. Not to mention also simply tunneling through and making it easier for water to reach plant roots while also flowing through to stop mold growth. Now, what's different about this system in particular, rather than just any system, is that it utilizes gravel underneath, suspending the dirt while keeping water from collecting on the dirt's bottom, forcing it to run through into the gravel and preventing this mold growth that, while it is prevalent on the orange, probably in the form of penicillin fungi, it is not as prevalent as we get down and down and down into the soil. Now, in particular concerning the actual digestion of the oranges, as you can see, penicillin's growing on the orange, which is most likely simply because of the orange's acidic content, making it much more harder for the worms to prefer, rather than, say, kiwi or the leaves that have been tossed into the mixture, which would be its natural food. Now, turning it such as this could maintain greater aridity to allow air into the soil so that the worms could continue their magic, while also distributing the nutrients even further and distributing water throughout the soil, simply maintaining that the soil remains properly close to the average of what the soil should be. Now, for example, as you can see here is the gravel that we used. It is very large, meaning enough porosity to allow water to simply flow from the soil down into the gravel and collect at the bottom without necessarily causing mold to grow, while also causing water to begin condensing into the soil, allowing the worms to ingest a small amount of water and carry it throughout the surface, ending up with the mixture we see right now. Now, about the worms themselves, they go through cycles of reproduction, meaning that right now in the soil, there are multiple worm eggs that have been spawned from the original 40 worms that we placed within. And also simply the worms themselves, very small, relatively loose, and not especially easy to see, as they remain distributed throughout the soil in such microhabitat as this. Now, this soil in particular prevents nitrogen burns, which is prevalent if you, say, used horse dung or artificial fertilizers to grow plants. But it's always suggested to mix it with regular soil to decrease nitrogen content, as such nitrogen burns could cause heavy damage to the plant, and also extremely heavy damage, particularly to the outside appearance of the plant, which could be noted by, say, brown spots on the plant that seem to be rotting off. It also is not as acidic as many other forms of soil that could be used, and it remains to be a worthwhile idea to use for, say, aeroponics and hydroponics, infusing it with this kind of soil to infuse the water with microbes that will help. And it also could be used for filtering water for human consumption and animal consumption using vermifiltration. The specific species is a red wriggler worm, which typically nest within the top foot of the soil, particularly in this area I'm examining now, and they are used to break down leaf matter. They're not particularly a threat as an invasive species, though they are in certain regions in upper North America. And they cannot spread easily as they require a thin set of temperatures needed to survive. Yeah, you can stop.